You've heard of the US Space Shuttle, and you've probably heard about the lesser-known Soviet Buran Energia II. I even got the chance to see the air test vehicle myself when I visited Speyer last year. But did you know that the Soviets designed an even better, fully reusable version of the Buran, with complete recovery of all the Buran and Energia components, with the main vehicle being a sort of amalgamation of the Super Heavy booster and spaceplane? I actually first stumbled across this vehicle through this amazing video by Hazegrayart. I'll link it below, definitely check it out. It inspired me to make my own version in Kerbal Space Program too. But because this vehicle never actually existed in the real world, there are a few discrepancies between the limited concept sketches and blueprints that we have available, and by available I mean on the first page of Google Images, which means I'm taking this as an excuse to take creative liberties and make a few changes to improve the vehicle a bit. I reduced the length of the forward cargo bay so that we could have a dedicated 5-seat crew module to carry Kerbals to space, though the vehicle itself will be fully remotely operated. No crew command pods here. I also had to come up with an alternate way to recover the side boosters. In the original concept, they would have deployed large wings that would allow them to glide down to an airstrip and land like a plane. And the lack of actuators and robotic parts of any kind in KSP 2 meant that I would need to take a different approach. So instead, I'll be soft landing the boosters in the ocean, Falcon 9 style, where they can then be recovered Electron style. Man, I'm so glad we're finally getting to having another orbital class reusable booster in real life. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. In fact, it's probably a bit too late for that. I pretty much talked about all of the design challenges and changes that I faced in this build, despite the fact that the footage hasn't actually got there yet. But hey, the time-lapse is really too fast for me to talk about what's happening on screen in the moment. Now, the number of engines on the Energia II... Oh, did I mention its name, by the way? It's called the Energia II, the Uragan. Probably should have started with that, but anyway, yes, the number of engines on the core stage does vary a bit between concept sketches, but most images depict it with 3 or 4 engines. I went with 3 for this build. The side boosters mostly always have 4 engine nozzles, which I guess tracks with the Soviet R7 rocket, you know, the Soyuz one, which also has 4 engine nozzles on each of its 4 side boosters. Speaking of the side boosters, unlike the R7, the Energia does not have them all placed symmetrically around the core stage, because those pesky wings would get in the way. Instead, they're all grouped around one side of the vehicle. When I was building this, it did make me a little bit apprehensive about how easy this thing would be to fly, but to be honest, this thing ended up being really stable in flight, and even without separatrons, the side boosters detached really cleanly without coming close to smashing the core stage wings, which is something I think every Kerbal player has experienced at least once or 12 times. Anyway, as you can probably see, the build is pretty much done. I'm just dotting some I's and crossing some T's. I decided to place a small space station module in the forward cargo bay, which we can then add to my low Kerbin orbit space station, before then docking the Energia II to the station's docking bay. One extra thing I had to add was some forward grid fins. KSP has never been very good at lifting body physics, unfortunately, and with no forward control surfaces, this thing just wants to constantly nosedive when gliding, so during our return to KSC, I'll have to deploy these fins to act as front canards. But here we are on the launch pad. Hopefully our mission will see similar levels of success to NASA's little helicopter that could. I feel like we should take a moment of silence to remember ingenuity. A helicopter meant to conduct only 5 flights on Mars that ended up completing 72 before it finally suffered mechanical failure that grounded it permanently. I mean, you've almost certainly read about this by now. There have been a lot of articles covering it, from sources ranging from government-owned outlets to media conglomerates. Interestingly, with this subject, 1 in 5 are right-leaning, while 24% lean left. And I know this thanks to Ground News, this video's sponsor. Staying informed and finding reliable, factual news can be a real challenge in today's media landscape. There are so many biases and perspectives out there that finding a balanced view can be difficult. Enter Ground News, a website and app that's the perfect solution for those looking for a comprehensive and unbiased view of the world's current events. It provides a visual breakdown of each story, including which outlets and their owners are reporting it, what their political biases are, and the factual accuracy of their sources. Going back to ingenuity, with Ground News you can compare the headlines. A headline on the left focused on personifying the helicopter, using words like how it finally sputtered out after exceeding expectations, while this one on the right used the slightly more dramatic mission over. Not every reporter is a space expert, so relying on just one or two sources can leave you with a misunderstanding of what's really going on. Ground News' mission to make the media landscape more transparent is something I really get behind. If you want to support what they do, then subscribing to their platform costs only $1 per month, or you can use my link ground.news/MattLowne to get 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan for just $5 per month. Thank you to Ground News for sponsoring today's video. And off we go. Now at the moment, all of the engines in the first stage are firing, so all of the core stage engines and the 4 side booster engines are all burning, but we're only draining fuel from the side boosters. You might have missed it in the time lapse because it was very quick, but I connected all of the 4 side boosters to the core stage with fuel lines, so that when they detach, the core stage is still fully fueled. Well, not completely fully fueled, in order to get the thrust weight ratio correct, but also have this thing look visually correct. I had to change some of the fuel levels in both the side boosters and the central core stage. But there we are, punching through the cloud layers on a glorious crisp Kerbin morning. I think it's morning. Where's the sun? I can't see. Maybe we can use the reflection on the forward nose cone. You know what? It doesn't matter. We're getting to an important part. Stage event. Yes, we have to do a quick save now, and then later on I did a quick load and switched to one of the side boosters. This is one of those cases where it's like technically a fully you can see I'm struggling to get the camera down so I can double click one of the vehicles, but yes, this is one of those times where it's not really a truly fully reusable launch vehicle in KSP, because the only way we can recover the side boosters and also recover the core stage is by not doing that. So we have to do a quick save, land the boosters, and then just pretend that we did this in the main flight. I'm only going to do it for one booster. Just pretend you didn't see the ones in the background crash. Ironically, during a test flight of this, I landed a booster, like you've just seen me do, and the other ones crashed into the water and remained intact. I can't remember if this was pre-patch or post-patch, but yeah. So that's the recovery of the side boosters. We're going to now rewind the clock and stage once again. This time we're not going to recover them. They're just going to fall into the ocean. Maybe they'll survive. There's a non-zero chance that some part of them might survive. And then we can continue flying our main Energia II core spaceplane machine, whatever you want to call it, to a low Kerbin orbit. But yeah, maybe this is a concept that would be worth revisiting in Kerbal Space Program 1, where of course we have the robotic parts. We can in fact have actuating wings that unfold themselves on the side boost. We can glide them down to the runway, which is how, you know, this vehicle would have functioned in real life had it ever been built. Again, highly recommend the Hazegrayart video to show. I got chills watching the shot of the boosters all lining up and gliding down to the runway together. Very good video, 10 out of 10. But yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite things to do in Kerbal Space Program and Kerbal Space Program 2 is recreating all of the bonkers designs that came out of America and the Soviet Union during the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. We've got some really cool, interesting vehicles, and I've recreated a lot of them over the years. Some standouts, probably the Spiral space plane, the Uragan, which I do plan on revisiting in Kerbal Space Program 2 at some point. It was one of my first ever videos I tried to make in KSP2, so this must have been like, I don't know, gosh, April last year. Was trying to make an Uragan, and I actually built a full-scale, Uragan vehicle, and it didn't work because there was no buoyancy. But now buoyancy has been added. You might have noticed in my little 4 science overview video, I used my Uragan to confirm it did indeed work now. We could build floating vehicles again, so maybe it's a good thing to revisit. Maybe I could do a Lowne class Uragan, which is basically an Uragan with, big guns on the top, so it's very cool, right? Now, as you can see, I was really proud of my space station intercept there, thinking like, yeah, we've got the nodes really close, but why is our separation so great? And then I realized that, I must have gone off course a little bit during ascent, and we're at a bit of a tilt now, so that was a bit of a shame. We almost got a very close encounter immediately before we even got into orbit, but 'twas not to be, I suppose. Space shuttles, even this one, which is actually it flew so much easier than like the standard, NASA style space shuttle that you do in KSP with the solid rocket boosters and the big external fuel tank with no engines on it, which is usually the most popular kind of space shuttle to recreate in this game. Now, in Kerbal Space Program 2, the dark side of planets and moons is very, very dark. It doesn't lend itself very well to YouTube videos because you can't really see what's going on. So when I was trying to plan my space station encounter, I wanted to make sure that it was happening on the daylight side of Kerbin, just so, you know, you guys can see what's going on, and also so I can see what I'm doing as well. Not that important for me as a player, I guess, because you can do everything on the nav ball and using the instruments and all that. But it doesn't make for great viewing, does it? So I got my encounter here right at the beginning of the day as well. So hopefully we've got lots and lots of time to do the docking and, you know, deploy our payload and all that. And we're going to need a lot of time. As you can see, this thing turns very, very slowly. The footage is playing back 4 times faster than real-time speed, and it turns about as fast as a cruise liner. And I decided to have the big brain moment of not having any monopropellant on board, or RCS thrusters. But that's a bit of a moot point, right? But, hang on! I thought I put a space station module inside the cargo bay. And part of that space station module had the Apollo-style command pod, which I still never remember the name of. Is it just the Mark III crew cabin? Anyway, irrelevant. That should have monopropellant reserves, right? So I was like, oh, maybe I drained the monopropellant by accident. I think you guys can probably see where this is going. But yes, twists and turns. Speaking of twists and turns, the space station is deciding to have a bit of a moment. So I switched to it, activated SAS. I don't know why it was spinning out of control like this. I mean, it had full electric charge. It wasn't out of electric charge and was just spinning. But again, why would it have that spin induced? Don't know. Phantom forces. The Kraken was... I must have caught it mid-Kraken attack. And I was luckily there to defuse that bomb. Then I became the bigger problem because I accidentally crashed into it with the space shuttle. But it was all fine. You know, Lowne Aerospace, we build our machines, space stations and space planes to be much stronger than they need to be, just in case the inevitable happens where we have a bit of an in-space collision. It was all fine, as you can see. It's ironic, we managed to strike one of the solar panels of all things as well. So I guess they really are just built different in Kerbal Space Program. Anyway, I then decided to open up the cargo bay to get the new space station payload deployed. But can't see much inside. I think at this point I hadn't actually clocked it yet that something had gone wrong, because I got a Kerbal out on EVN. Oh my goodness, where is my space station module? I've got part of it. I just don't know where the rest of it is. So I don't really know what happened. I don't think this was a glitch. I must have just been, like, you know, changing the colors or something on the cargo bay and moving the cargo bay parts around, and I must have accidentally grabbed hold of the space station module by accident and deleted it. I really don't know what happened there. So my heartfelt apologies, guys. What we've done is we've now just deployed a bit of space junk, and now I'm just unsuccessfully docking what's left of the space shuttle to the docking arm of the space station. I was going to try and dock it, in air quotes, properly by just moving the space shuttle around and keeping the space station in one place, but the space shuttle just turns so slowly. Like, the space station, actually is more maneuverable than the shuttle itself, ironically. So I decided to just use the Lowne lazy method of docking and just have both vessels do the orientation to get the docking all done nicely. And there we are. So we're going to just reattempt docking, going very, very slowly, under 3 meters per second for that space shuttle, and then we can watch the magic happen. Wait for it. There we go. All docked successfully. And actually, it looks quite cool, actually. It looks almost like the space station has been, like, extended out of the forward cargo bay of the space shuttle. There you go. Isn't that cool? As you can see, I've got the new science lab on the space station, as well as a diving bell. Just thought it looked cool. Just pretend in this context it's not a diving bell. It's something else entirely. Anyway, now we need to think about getting back to the Kerbal Space Center, which is now on the dark side of the planet, which not ideal, really. So I decided to go to the tracking station to get a bit more time warp. I did it wrong, though. You got to go to the Kerbal Space Center first, then the tracking station to get the full time warp, and then we can just, wait a little bit for the Kerbal Space Center to be on the daylight side of the planet. And we just pretend this is like the time being spent docked to the space station, where we're doing all of our science and all of that. I mean, how long have we actually been docked? A few hours, maybe. I don't know. We're very efficient, all right? We're very efficient with our science. We don't need to be spending that much time in orbit to do all of the science objectives we need to do. So we can detach the space shuttle and prepare for Kerbal re-entry. Now, you may recall I installed some forward grid fins to the space shuttle to help with kind of aerodynamic stability, but it's still not that aerodynamically stable. Like, it does really, really want to flip over if you're not careful. So it was pretty challenging to do the re-entry, but we do the re-entry. Don't worry, I don't just end the video saying, sorry guys, didn't work, bye. But I'm just saying, it was a bit of a challenge to get it right. You might see a couple of phantom cuts where I had to reload a quick save, but I don't want to waste you guys' time. I'm just going to show you the full seamless re-entry, and we can just pretend that I am good at this game, right? What is there to talk about on screen? Not a lot, because see what I mean? It's very dark, the dark side of the planet. I mean, I guess that makes sense, but I really wish that they would add an ambient light boost feature like we had in Kerbal Space Program 1. My Kerbal Space Program 1, it's very, very bright. Because YouTube, I say this all the time, right? So you guys know, but YouTube's like compression system, when you upload a video to it, it makes videos much darker than they were when they first made. So when I watch my videos back in like VLC player when it's rendered, they don't look very good because they're very over bright. But then when they're on YouTube, it's perfect. Or at least I think they look all right on YouTube. Maybe you guys disagree. Anyway, there's our Kerbal. That's actually a bit too aggressive, so I'm going to do a little bit of a pro-grade burn. Yep, that looks good. And then we can straighten ourselves out and prepare for Kerbal re-entry. And also close the forward cargo bay. That would be a good idea to do. Now, whilst we're in the upper atmosphere, where aerodynamics aren't really a big thing we need to worry about yet, we can do a few more things to make our re-entry easier. First of all, I'm going to activate the control surfaces of the wings and tail fin. Kind of need those to do any kind of controlled flight. I'm also going to pump the fuel into the forwardmost tank, just to help move the center of mass as far forward as possible to keep things nice and stable. Am I going to do that? Yep, there we are. Yeah. The resource managers are going to select our Methalox tanks and pump them all into the forwardmost S3 14400 tank. I'm going to leave the grid fins folded in for now. We don't really need them until we need to start pitching up. We don't really want to be pitching up aggressively in the upper parts of the atmosphere because then we're at greater risk of just going into an out-of-control tumble and a stall. We want to be nice and controlled. So I'm going to keep those grid fins keep the grid fins retracted until the very last part of our flight. And there we are. You can see the flames of re-entry are beginning to manifest themselves. Now, I built the wings for the space shuttle out of the large wing pieces in the vehicle assembly building. Now, I'm told that some people, maybe this has been fixed because re-entry heating has been somewhat nerfed since it first came out. But I've been told that some people were struggling with SSTOs in space shuttles because the wings would overheat. But I don't know how well this is communicated in the game. But if you use larger wings that are like thicker and bigger, they're much better at withstanding re-entry heating. So if you're building a space shuttle, use the big wings. They're much more hardy when it comes to enduring re-entry. But it's not like a static thing, right? So if you've got a small wing, but then you make it really big using the sliders, then that will increase its heat resistance. I don't really know how well it's kind of explained in the game. This was explained to me directly by a developer. That's how I know it. So in case you didn't know, there's a little top tip right there. That's right. This video was a tutorial this entire time. It wasn't a tutorial about how to get to the Kerbal Space Center though, because as you can see, it's coming up on the horizon. And we're still very, very high. We're still like 3 kilometers up, and we're traveling at 2 kilometers per second, as evidenced by the flames. We really need to be slowing down rather quickly, actually. You can see I started panicking when I saw the runway. So then I started just trying to force a stall. So I deployed the grid fins early and then just tried to get this thing to start tumbling out of control. So we would immediately start building up speed, reducing our speed so we could come to a stop. And it went pretty well. Now, the downside of this amazing plan was that we are now in a stall, so then I had to point towards the ground and then retract the grid fins to regain aerodynamic stability. And now that I think that that's been more or less achieved, you can kind of do this by just have your space plane automatically follow the prograde marker. Yep, I'd say we're now pretty stable. We can redeploy the grid fins and start attempting a landing. I wanted to land facing west to east, but there wasn't enough runway space, so we're going to have to land facing east to west. The reason I wanted to land the other way was so we'd have the KSC in the background, but I don't know, it wasn't to be. I also maxed out the braking power of the rear wheels because I wasn't sure how well this thing would come to a stop, which as you can see, maybe was a little bit of a mistake on my part. As soon as you touch the ground, This thing immediately started drifting and it ended up flipping, but nothing broke. So I count this as a successful landing and hopefully a successful mission and video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really love recreating the bonkers Soviet stuff. It's always good fun. So if you've got any ideas of what to recreate next in the comments, always open to ideas. Also, my Patreons on screen and my channel members, they help make all of this content possible. Really, guys, I could not do this without your generous support, so I really do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you as well to Ground News for sponsoring today's video. I actually really appreciate their mission statement and what they're trying to do, so really happy that they wanted to sponsor this video. And that's it. I once again hope you enjoyed what you saw, and I will see you in the next one.